Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We will just wait a moment for everyone to join the session. Okay, we will get started. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Mercedes, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Specialist with Charity Village. As we are gathering here in a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. As a settler on this land, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Anishinaabeg, which includes the Ojibwe of Fort William First Station. For those who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you were looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed when you joined the webinar that you were automatically put on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Look for that at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible, but in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you will still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for today, Renzia Mellis, the Manager of Clinical Operations for Lyra Health Canada. Welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the land acknowledgement, Mercedes. I work from Pickering in Ontario, and I would also like to acknowledge that my workplace resides on the land and the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and Williams Treaty signatories of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations. Whenever I do a land acknowledgement, I always encourage people to not just see this as a formality and to take it to the next step. So I just want to spend a couple of seconds talking about that. If you want to know more about the land that you live on, you can go to Whose Land and identify what the treaties are and who the nations were that lived on the land before you. And sometimes taking it to the next step is just about researching the nations that lived there before you, maybe learning something about the treaty. For instance, the Williams Treaty that is mentioned in this, in my land acknowledgement, was signed in 1923. Well, it wasn't really signed. It was put in place without any negotiation and representation by Indigenous peoples. And it was renegotiated and settled with Indigenous input and negotiation in 2018. So it's good to know these things and to take it to the next step to understand that this is more than a formality. And with that, I'm going to move into our topic, but I do want to not just read out the land acknowledgement and pass it over as just a statement. So we're talking about burnout in the not-for-profit sector. And the only thing that I want to say to you about this presentation is everything that I talk about will be in the slides, but I do not talk about everything that's in the slides. I have a lot of slides and a lot of information there. You will be getting copies of it. So anything that is in the slides that you receive, you will trigger and understand, where it comes from and the context from what I was sharing. So we're going to be talking about recognizing burnout. We're going to talk about recognizing what are the contributing factors to burnout. And we're going to talk about what can we do to prevent and overcome burnout if we are in that position. And there are some resources also, those will be posted by Charity Village, and they're also in the on one of the slides in the handouts. So let's start with the definitions. Whenever we talk about burnout or mental health, I always start with the World Health Organization definition of mental health, because that is our touchstone for all of what we're talking about today as well. And the World Health Organization definition of mental health is very all-encompassing, and it is really, you'll see as we go along, that it is relevant to all of the aspects that we talk about in burnout, because it talks about our well-being, so our mental well-being, our emotions, our heart, and our mind. It talks about dealing with adversarial situations, coping with stresses in life. It talks about thriving and flourishing, being recognized, having purpose, and being part of a community, having a community around us. And the one piece that it doesn't have, and that is not there for everybody, or not everybody looks for that, is of course that there is also an element that may be part of our health and our mental health, that is our spiritual health. But that is for different individuals. But this, I love this definition because it's all it's encompassing of so many aspects of our life. And not only that, it also states that health is not the absence of illness. So just because we have not been diagnosed with a mental health disorder doesn't mean that we're doing great and that we're thriving. You can not have an illness and still not be healthy. And so I wanted to just emphasize that as our touchstone as we talk about what is burnout. What kind of a mental health situation does burnout involve? And the burnout is, first thing I need to say is burnout is real. And that was really something that was confirmed and kind of put into place when in 2019, the World Health Organization added burnout to their ICD. That is their International Classification of Disease. Now, what's important to understand there is that burnout in and of itself is not a disorder. Burnout is a syndrome that leads to other disorders, that leads to needing more physical and mental health resources in order to heal and overcome. So it's not in and of itself an illness. And it's important to keep that in mind as we're going through this. It's also being contextualized as something that is workplace related. Now, I don't always agree with that, because the outcome, and when we talk about the features and the characteristics of burnout, you'll see that you can also get those from a broader definition, where perhaps workload is not just what we're doing in the workplace, but also about all those duties and responsibilities that we might be carrying on top of being an employee, whether that's elder care, child care, trying to get an education, all those other things that we're doing on top of just our workplace involvement. And so it's important to understand that, this is not, it's not an illness in and of itself, but it is a driver for illness. One of the things that they find with people that experience high burnout and experience that on a regular basis is that they're much higher risk of being hospitalized. They have a much higher risk of cardiovascular illness. They have a much higher risk of ending up in the emergency ward. So there's a clear correlation between people experiencing high burnout and the impact on their physical health, for instance. And the prevalence in not-for-profit, it was actually hard to find statistics, but I did find some statistics and some up-to-date statistics, and they're alarming for the non-for-profit sector. The Stanford Innovation Review last year did a review, and they found that 50% of nonprofit employees experience high levels of burnout. Now, Gallup also did a very recent review on burnout, and they found that across the board, that number's 30% of people that are reporting high levels and often and severe levels of burnout. So that's a big difference. So there's some things that we need to talk about in the not-for-profit sector that can impact or put people at higher risk. The other thing is that, of course, that high burnout has a huge impact on employees and on the employer in the nonprofit sector. If you have people that are wanting to leave their jobs, so we're seeing that 25% of people want to leave, almost 25% of people want to leave the sector altogether. That means that there's lots of disruption. There's lots of money and effort and time that could be spent otherwise going into, recruiting and onboarding new people the whole time, and that changeover, that constant in and out of people is also very disruptive to the flow of work and disruptive to people in their peer groups and how they work together. So there's a high price to pay for that high burnout number. So what does it look like? And these are the three factors that the World Health Organization identifies as typifying burnout as a syndrome. This is what people experience. So people experience physical symptoms where they have low energy, when they're depleted, they're exhausted, they're fatigued the whole time. They experience in their mental health, their well-being, and their emotions, where they lose hope, they become cynical, they become disengaged, they become very negative around, so morale is down. This is another feature. So it's our body, our physical health, it's our mind and our emotional health, and it is our cognitive health, because we are not able to be as efficient under those circumstances. People start to make mistakes, they slow down, they have a harder time motivating themselves, they have a harder time focusing. And so you can see, all of these things are going to impact each other. If I didn't sleep because I'm so stressed out about work, I'm going to be really, really physically tired. And if I do that all the time, I'm going to be even more tired. Then I go to work, I have a harder time getting through my workload because I can't focus. My backlog is going to get bigger because I'm not working as fast or as efficient as I should be or could be or expect to be. Now I'm stressed out because my backlog just seems to be getting bigger and bigger. So now I'm losing more sleep. And you can see, you can get the picture that these aspects all impact on each other. That can put us in a downward spiral. The good thing, though, as we talk about this, is that if you can stop one of these aspects and take that as your entry point to start making change, you can also turn it the other way. So let's first go through some of these things and what it actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. So what might you see in yourself or in people around you, your manager, your staff, your, people that you love, your partner, maybe your partner's at risk? What are the kinds of things that you might see in yourself? Or what often happens is people see these things in you and they try and let you know that they're seeing this, because once you're in that cycle, going in that downward cycle around burnout, you often no longer see the forest for the trees, and you just keep on going, and you're often not aware of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that further up. So here are some of the things that people might see. So what people might have is like all kinds of unexplained aches and pains that they have. They have headaches, muscle aches, they're stiff, they're uncomfortable in their body, they change eating, they want to eat the whole time, they don't want to eat, they have a hard time sleeping, they want to sleep all the time. And really here it's about change, right? That happens to our physical routine and our health and our body needs, where people, and the one that I really want to emphasize is low immunity. And this one kind of ties into all of the other ones as well, because people that are over exhausted, that are depleted, their immune system goes down. If you're constant under chronic stress and you're not able to manage the stress and cope with that effectively, your immune system goes down. So you're much more susceptible to colds and flus and COVID and whatever else is floating around. Now, the piece that plays out in the mental and the behavioral piece there is that if you are low mood, if you are distressed, if you are like you're in that cynical, who cares, I can't be bothered place that goes with burnout, then when you have a runny nose, you're at a much higher risk of taking a day off, because what does it matter? What difference is it going to make if you go to work or not? So things that maybe in the past you would have just powered through and gone to work and then felt better by 11 o'clock. Now people are much more inclined to go, you know what? I don't feel so good. I don't think I'm going to go to work today. Who cares? What matters? Who's going to notice? And so when people are in that place, all of these things play themselves out. And people lose their joy. What you did, you don't get joy out of what you used to do, where it's some things that used to, and that can be also at home, that you lose joy in the things that you used to. If you had a hobby that was distracting or gave you joy, now it's a task and a chore to be able to just do the thing that you used to love doing, whether it's at work or at home. So there's all these different things that happen. The other thing, of course, is behavioral. How we relate to our work, how we relate to other people. People start self-medicating. That's a high risk. People start drinking, maybe taking pills or taking melatonin to get to sleep, and it's not working. Or they start numbing the pain because they're having aches and pains. And so people often go to self-medicating because they're just not happy. And sometimes it affects our relationships because you know what? We're just so frustrated. We just can't handle one more poke from anybody. We just can't that request from our kid or from our partner to do something completely reasonable or even something nice is just too much. Now, because there is such a broad impact, there's often confusion about, is it burnout or is it something else? So here's the things that it's not. It's not depression. Low mood and low energy are also indicators of depression. The thing with depression is that it's not like burnout, contextual. Burnout is contextual. Depression is the thing itself. So burnout can lead to depression, but it is not the same thing. It's not having a bad day. All of this is about, duration, frequency, and severity of the symptoms. Everybody has a rotten day where they're like, I don't think I want to go to the office. I had a rotten night, or I'm just so exhausted from, I don't know, something going to the dentist yesterday. That happened to me. I had to go to the dentist. I got bad news. And then the next day I have to really go, wow, I really want to just sit here and be sorry for myself. I'm having a rotten day. That's not burnout. I'm legitimately having a bad day, but I'm not burnt out. It's not the same as stress. And we're going to talk a bit about that because stress in and of itself isn't always a bad thing. It's not an attitude problem. It is a real thing. And it's also not something where when somebody tells you they feel burnt out or they are burnt out, to say, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or you're just not competent enough for the job. That's not how it works. Burnout is much more insidious and much more pervasive than these things. So that brings us to the slippery slope of burnout. When I said stress is not always a bad thing, I really meant that. Stress can be a really enjoyable thing. We purposely go to scary movies, we get on roller coasters, we go on a new date, we move somewhere, we get a new job, we get a new hobby, we learn a new skill. Those things are stressful too. But that's eustress. That is beneficial stress. That is enjoyable, that has good results, that lets up after a while because we master the situation. There's a release and a relief of the stress. That's eustress. We enjoy that, and sometimes we actually purposely seek it out. What we're talking about with burnout is pervasive negative stress and pressure. And it's not like one day you wake up and you have burnout. What does happen though is one day you wake up and you realize all those things that were going on, that's burnout. You never have burnout without having things leading down there. So part of the key to prevention and overcoming is to making sure that you are aware as you go along. And as we're going down that slope, it changes with the things that we verbalize. So some of those symptoms that were on that other slide, maybe you think you're just struggling to stay on top. But if you've been struggling to stay on top and it's only getting worse for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's like your modus operandi, then you're heading into burnout. If you have aches and pains, everybody has a day where they have aches and pains. if you have aches and pains all the time, if you have recurring headaches, if you have recurring thoughts of who cares, nothing's ever going to change. Why would I even do that? I used to like doing that, but I don't want to anymore. Whatever happened to doing this? Whatever happened to that? If those things are recurring with you, you are on the slope. And so you really want to get there before you lose all optimism and confidence, because then you're just really continuing that downward spiral that we talked about and all of those things. And it'd be very difficult to reverse that. So one of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like to invite you at this point and just jot something down, just your first thought. Often our first thoughts are the truest ones before we start to censor ourselves. Look at this thing and take a couple of seconds for yourself to think about, where am I? Am I, is my stress stuff that I know is going to let up? Is it going to be okay? Or have I been like living stress nonstop? Am I losing my confidence? Am I drowning? Is my workload just getting bigger and bigger? Am I starting to snap at my kids? Am I being unkind to people around me? Can I just not be bothered? Or I don't want to be around people because that's just one more burden. Think about yourself. Are you exhibiting any of those kinds of things? And where are you? And I'm not asking people to share. I'm just asking you to reflect for yourself where you might sit on this. And I'm just going to give you a couple seconds for that. And while you do that, I'm going to take that opportunity to look at my phone because I forgot to start my stopwatch to time myself. Okay. Okay, so I think everybody's had at least their first thought where they went, huh, I think, this has been going on for a long time. Maybe I'm not just struggling. Maybe I need to do something to change that, to curb and to try and bring that back up rather than continuing to go spiraling downwards. So once you kind of have an idea, okay, this is where I am, then we want to talk about what might be the root causes. What are the kinds of things that can contribute? Because knowing the root causes, knowing the source sets the course, right? So that way, when we understand what some of the things might be that are contributing within our organization, to the people in our organization, or things that we are personally experiencing, that will help us to set ideas or to come up with a guide and action plan for where we want to stop that cycle and start to turn it around. So here are some of the risk factors. There's work-related risk factors. Now, you will notice that I put at the bottom, overwhelming workload is at the bottom. What Gallup found and what is a recurring theme that they find with work satisfaction, with work engagement, and work effectiveness is that it's not always the amount of work. Even work-life balance isn't always about working less. It's about how you feel about your work and your work environment. And that's really important. So what's going on in the workplace? How are you feeling? Is it a psychologically healthy and safe place for you to be? Do you feel that people have your back? Or does your organization, if you're a manager, is this an organization where people have each other's back, where management has the back of the team, where team members have each other's back, where they're supported for each other, where there's trust and autonomy? Trust and autonomy, those are kind of things, when we talked about that mental well-being, the first definition of mental health, about being able to be recognized, being able to thrive, to feel successful, to be able to use your abilities. That means that you have autonomy to do those things, the trust from people to do those things. It also means that, for instance, you are given the tools and the training and the resources to do what you have to do, and that you have the support to do it. So those are some of the things that are risk factors in the workplace if you are not getting those things, if the relationships aren't working, if the circumstances and the tools aren't in place. Also, if you're not working to your strengths. And I love this one. This is one that doesn't come up a lot, but it can be extremely hard. If you are essentially a left-handed person and you're doing right-handed work, that's a lot more work than doing left-handed work. So you really, the point is that, an organization needs to use you for your strengths. You need to be looking for your strengths and knowing your strengths and being able to apply those and to speak up around those things. But you need to, as an organization, it's important to look at, am I allowing people to work to their strengths, or am I trying to put a square peg into a round hole? There's also personal factors. There's things that we ourselves carry with us that can impact how at risk we are for going into burnout. And that has a lot to do with, how enmeshed am I with my work? Is my whole identity, my workplace, is my whole identity being perfect? Always doing the right thing, whether that's at home or at work. Do I give myself permission? Have I got values that are actually helpful, or do I have values that are destructive? Um, is my whole self-esteem tied up into always doing the right thing, always getting it right, always getting everything done? Am I my job? Those are one of those things. Do I put difficult demands on myself? The other thing is, am I working, and have I put myself in a place where I'm actually working to my strengths? Do I know what my strengths are? And am I actually using that? Or am I one of those people that thinks, well, I'm really good at A, so you know what? I think I'm going to go do B so I can get good at that. That is not always the right way to work. You can stretch, but leveraging your strengths makes you also stronger. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to do what I'm good at. And I'm not going to try and do something that I'm not good at and kill myself and press on myself to try and get that done. And then, of course, there are also circumstances that contribute. What are you juggling? Are you doing work? Are you going through a new marriage? Are you going through a separation? Are you grieving? Are you in a financially insecure place? People may be juggling a lot of different balls. And so that also is one of the things that can put people, those are things that are not workplace related, but it is the context in which you are, juggling those work responsibilities. And then the last but not least is the human giver syndrome. Do you suffer from human giver syndrome? And human giver syndrome is really something that people do at home and at work. And it's a very high risk factor for people in the not-profit sector. This is where, other people's needs are always more important than yours. So you suspend what you need to do for yourself. You suspend taking breaks. You suspend taking care of your health. You don't go and do your annual doctor's visit. You don't go to the dentist. You don't do your annual mammogram, whatever it is. You're not doing the things that you need to do for your health. You're not making sure you get to bed on time. You're not making sure you get good nutrition because you're so absorbed in giving and taking care of others until you burn out and there's nothing left to give. So this is one that is very common, and it has a lot to do also with some of the unique factors of the nonprofit sector, where there's the context in which people work. It is often a financially insecure. There may be funding this year or less funding next year. It's often that the need and the requirements from people. And I know even if you're in the arts, if you're dedicated, people that go and work in the nonprofit, they go there because they care, because they are about the mission and the cause that they're supporting, whether it is, the importance of sustaining the art of pantomime in the world, or whether it is about caring for people that are homeless and struggling and advocating for social justice. People are very much dedicated to that. So they get very easily wrapped up in that. And then in the end, again, they don't see the forest for the trees anymore, and they forget why they're doing what they're doing until it wears them down. So these are some of the things. And of course, there's huge, if you are in that, in the caregiving sector of the nonprofit, there is a tremendous price. And I really believe that in many people, there is still an aftermath of the exhaustion that COVID gave to us in trying to take care of people and filling those mandates, and the aftermath of what happened to the people that we care for during COVID. So all of these things are very unique to the nonprofit sector that put us at that 50% as opposed to 30% of people experiencing burnout. Now, the good news about burnout is that it can be avoided because it is contextual. It can be overcome. And for many people who've actually gone through burnout, though I am not in any way, do not get me wrong, I am not advocating that you go all the way to rock bottom so that you can have an aha moment and a life-changing moment. I would suggest you do that before you hit rock bottom. But people who have experienced burnout often see it as a turning point, and they do see it as an aha moment. There's an article that I put in the resources from people that went through burnout and came out on the other end with a new perspective on life and a new purpose, and not necessarily abandoning their vocation or their calling, but putting it in a different mold. So there's a lot of things that can be done around burnout to prevent burnout. And there's things that can be done at the different levels. So organizational. And really, these are some things that are in there. If you really want to look further deeper into what can be done around burnout from an organizational point of view, I really recommend that people check out the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety, and check out the Guarding Minds at Work worksite, because there's a lot of suggestions, practical suggestions on how to assess, because the solutions need to match the actual root cause. Because maybe you have a workplace where people really are really kind to each other and they really are very supportive, but the challenge that you have is the constant financial insecurity or the lack of resources that is putting people over the top. So just trying to enhance team building is not going to be the thing. Then maybe you need to look at, how can I manage workload? How can I empower people to say no? How can I address it and open up that conversation? So for that, for you to understand what the root causes are, and from there set your plan of action to be able to address those things, you need to start by looking at yourself. And that means daring to admit that there may be burnout, daring to talk about it, to acknowledge it, to listen to people, but also listen to the input from people and do something with it. Listening to people's input without actually doing anything with it is not helpful. And that actually makes it worse. So if you can create that culture and start by that, listening to people, acknowledging, being transparent, and allowing people to admit how they're struggling and finding out what it is that they're struggling with is part of it. The other thing is, a lot of people, when they're just so in the day-to-day grind, and we talked about that before, is, have your people lost purpose? Have they lost the inspiration and the purpose? Like, they joined your organization for a reason. They sought you for a reason. Has the day-to-day grind make them lose sight of what the cause is, what the inspiration is, what the larger picture is? So that's one of the things that you can help people to understand what they're doing. What is it that you're striving for? And also understand that that purpose is much larger than just their day-to-day grinding away, and that they are allowed to step away for 5 seconds to take care of themselves, because that purpose will still be there. Are you giving people strength-based feedback? Are you using people in the best possible way? And are you acknowledging what they're doing well, and not just where things are not going well or things might be falling by the wayside for whatever reason? And again, you need to look at, what are the resources? Maybe your root causes are around the resources that are available to people, whether that's training, whether it's training your managers so that they can support the staff and be supportive and prevent burnout. Is it about how the work is distributed? Sit down and have a conversation about your efficiency in your protocols. Do some mind mapping on the organization. That's a lot cheaper than having to have people, going in and out and deal with that 23% that want to leave the sector, 25% that want to leave their employer, and having to deal with that. It's a lot cheaper to sit down and just say, okay, what are we doing? How can we improve things? How can we find other resources? Even if it's free resources to help people train, to help people deal with mental health concerns, bringing those kinds of things in. There's always a way, but you need to stop and think about that for yourself as an organization. And one of the things you also want to look at, we know that managers are actually a very high group at risk of burnout, because they're sandwiched between the mandate and taking care and advocating for the people on their team. And so, also make sure that you're monitoring that as an organization, checking in with your managers. They're people too. Management. If you're in an organization and you want to see, what can I do? I am a manager and I want to be there for people. I don't want my people to burn out. I want them to be engaged. I want them to feel that they have purpose. I want them to feel that this is a good place for them to be, that we are a good work environment for them, and that we won't let them burn out. The first thing you need to do is take care of yourself. You will not be able to do for your team what you need to do if you yourself are burnt to a crisp. So you take care of yourself. You are the role model. If you take a break, your staff knows that they can take a break and that they can walk away for 5 minutes. If you take a sick day when you're done for and you need a sick day, your staff will know that they can take a sick day, and they will be more effective when they come back than if they are sitting in that workplace and muddling along for like 3 days or 2 weeks because they're not well. If you can do that, your staff can do it. Get yourself a mentor. Management is a hard thing. Not everybody is trained. You may be really good at your job, but that doesn't mean that you're trained in having these difficult conversations or sitting down with people. For you to be able to sit down, it helps to have a mentor or an advisor. If you are lucky enough to have something like an EAP at your organization, use the EAP to get manager consultations around, how do I talk to people? What can I do for my team? There's things are included in mental health resources. Find yourself a mentor and an advisor, whether that's somebody internally or externally, that can help you, that you can bounce things off your observations and help you find your balance. And again, you are the one that role models to your staff how you want people to treat each other, that you listen to people, that you encourage collaboration, that you express appreciation. People do really well when you say, that was a good job. Thank you very much for what you did. I didn't take that for granted. You have no idea how powerful that is. And you need to mean it, but it is a very powerful thing that helps people and energizes people, to help them understand that, yeah, you know what, I'm being seen, I'm working to my abilities, I'm making a difference. And of course, mutual respect and collaboration. You model that in how you talk to your team, how you expect your team to talk to each other, and how you talk with your own managers. And when you were in that place, you can be there for your team members. That's the groundwork for you to be able to have those conversations and ask people, how are you doing? And actually listen to what it is that they're saying. I'm going to just focus on the focus me, free me, know me kind of approach, because that's a really interesting approach. And that was something that I heard in a podcast. What it basically means is, focus me means be very clear in your expectations and priorities. So don't let people muddle around in vagueness where they don't really know if they did a good job or what's really expected of them. Be very clear. This is what the expectations are. These are the priorities that you need to be focusing on. Free them from stress. So in for helping them to reach those expectations and those priorities, make sure that they have what they need to be able to do that. Whether it means that you're sitting down, whether they have their own mentor in the organization that trains them, that helps them work through things, helps them prioritize, helps them with time management. Those are all things that are helpful. And we're having the tools and the appropriate tools. So free them up from the stressors that are unnecessary in the workplace. And again, know their strengths, acknowledge what they're good at, give them feedback on that, and see where they need help if they're not doing well, and try to use them so that they can use those strengths and again feel effective and feel that they're coping well and being fun. The one thing that you don't want to do is, if you see that people are burnout is not dealt with by having, a yoga session or bringing a comic in, because those are all fun things for stress relief, but they are not what is going to be the solution to your burnout in your staff. If somebody's really burnt out, it's not about going to see a funny movie. That's not going to do the thing. And that's, when I said burnout is much more pervasive, it's not about having a bad day and then, having a good night's sleep and going to see a movie and then voila, the next day you're good. That's not burnout. That's a bad day, but it's not burnout. So this is something that is I put in there because I went looking for quotes, and I have them here and there. You don't have to read all of them or believe all of them. But this is one that I thought was important, because what's important in what the Dalai Lama here is saying is step back. You are allowed to step back. And I figured he's a pretty good authority on this about care and responsibility and self-care. And so I think if the Dalai Lama can tell people to step back, you're allowed to tell yourself to step back. And the long view, and I love that he says, don't get stuck in the moment. Look at the long view and the long perspective. What am I doing? Why am I here? And where am I going with all of this? Oh, sorry, let me go back there. So I have 3 slides. Let me just see where I'm doing time-wise. Okay, not too bad. I have 3 slides for self-help, for things that you can do for yourself to prevent or to recover from burnout. So again, you need to know yourself. Now, the first 2 slides are the key, and the third one is really kind of a redundant slide, but I'll talk to you about that in a moment. The first thing is that what it looks like, what needs to be done, and where your turning points are is going to be uniquely personal. Where your root causes are, where your solutions are, what your symptoms are, but also your solution is going to be yours. So I can't tell you, okay, if A, do B, then go to C, and voila, it's all taken care of. That's not how it works. So you need to start by knowing yourself. You need to look at that slope and go, okay, I am 1/3 down, I am 2/3 down, I'm at the bottom. How do I know that? What's going on with me? Am I feeling it in my body, my well-being, my mind, my heart? Am I isolating? What are the things that are telling me I'm done for, I'm burnt, I'm on my way to burnout? Look at those things. What are the root causes? What is it that's causing you this stress? What are the thoughts that you're having? Is it the workload? Is it because you're just fed up with people not being nice to you or not being supportive? What is it that is causing you to be in this place where you're losing optimism, where you're becoming cynical? Maybe it's because there's constant change happening in the workplace. You need to find what you are. Maybe you're juggling too many balls. I cannot tell you what your root causes are. That's where you need to sit down and go, okay, this is the thing that I rebel against the most when in my quiet moments, that I hate, that annoy me, that just cost me more and more time and effort to deal with, that cause me distress. Find your own, those things that belong to you. Then you need to put that in the context of, okay, who am I? What is my purpose? Where am I going for this? What is my meaning? What are my values? Are my values still actually relevant for where I am in my life right now? Are they helpful? Are they harmful for me to try and be the person that has everything right, to try and be the person that is the good person for everybody all the time? Do I really need to be there for everyone? So these are the kind of things that you want to think about. Are my beliefs helping or harming me to be that person that I want to be? So if I want to be a loving, caring person, and I have a belief that I have to do that all the time perfectly, am I actually going to be able to be that loving, caring person? If that's the priority, if that's my purpose in life, that I want to care, I can't care because I'm so overworked being perfect that I can't do that anymore. So think about those things. Are you true? Are you living to your values? Whether that's around, one of the things I often bring to people um, is part of your value, I love family. I want to be there for my parents. I want to be a better parent than my parent was. I want to be this kind of a loving, present parent. But I'm not living up to that because I'm so wrapped up in other things, or I'm so letting myself get so worked up and stressed out about trying to do something else that I can't be there and do that. So are you true to what you really want to be? And then finally, what you need is your what's in it for me. In all of those things, that purpose, that where am I, who am I want to be, you end up on the what is in it for me. And this is where you think long term. And this is where the Dalai Lama says, think long term. It's not about getting today done. It's about where do you see yourself and how do you see yourself in a person? What is the motivator that you can hold on to when things get rough, in trying to make change, in trying to speak up, in trying to turn things around, to take better care of yourself, to try and take care of people in your workplace, to do what it is that you need to do to overcome and prevent burnout. What is that motivator? Because other people are telling you you're not doing well or you're not spending enough time. People nagging you is not a good motivator. You need to really think about, who am I? Where do I want to go? And that's some work that it takes. But know thyself is step number one. And I'm spending a lot of time on this. The next thing is, once you have your what's in it for me, your long-term vision about how you want to be, who you want the world, how you want to walk through the world, what you want your legacy to be for socially, in your family, with your partner. When you found that piece, then you need to decide, okay, where am I ready? Am I wanting to, do I even think I need to change? Is everything going okay? I don't think I need to do anything. To, moving through to, well, sometimes I think I could do things different or better, or maybe I should listen to that feedback once in a while. Have you got a plan of action? Are you ready? Are you at that tipping point where you're going to go, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm ready to go. This is where I want to be. And this is what's going to drive me. This is what I'm going to hang on to. This is how I'm going to set the course. Or have you already made that choice and you're sticking to the plan? Have you fallen off of it because you were doing so well? You were on your way to turning around that burnout, and then an extra assignment came in and you went, okay, I'll do it. And now you're working all hours again. Did you fall off the wagon, and do you need to get back on it and revisit your action plan, whether it's realistic or where you are? So those are different places that you need to think about. And those two pieces, knowing where you are, because going ahead because you haven't got the right motivator and you're really not there to take action, you haven't really thought about what you want to do and how you want to do it, you will not be successful and you're just creating a worse situation. So those are the key to anything. And then there's this next slide where I'm going to ask you to think about those things. And then we'll talk about slide number 3 on getting forward. So I'm going to ask you, you looked at where you are on that slope. Where do you sit on that slope? And what just reflect a bit on what's in it for me. What is the vision that is being frustrated for me because I'm not being able to get out of this place where I'm treading water? And how ready am I to do something about it? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds for that. Just jot something down. First thoughts are often the least censored and the most true. You don't have to think it all the way through today. I just hope that you have like a thought that came up where you go, ooh, that's it. That's what's being frustrated. This is where I'm not who I want to be or where I want to be. And yeah, I'm not ready to do anything about it. I still haven't got all the motivators. Or yeah, you know what? I think I can start tomorrow. That's the point. Think about that for yourself. You don't have to think it all the way through. Now, this is slide number 3. This is a redundant slide. This is a menu. Once you are ready to go, once you've figured out the other piece, it will speak to itself. I used to have like slides and slides, get good nutrition. Here's what you take care of yourself. Eat more broccoli, drink more water, avoid excessive alcohol and caffeine, go take your breaks, do meditations and breathing exercises. Once you know where your pain points are and whether you're ready to go and do with it, it will tell you. You will find something that is your entry point, whether it is changing something around taking care of your body, whether it is something about challenging yourself, maybe challenging that you have human giver syndrome and go, oh, I didn't know that existed. Now that I know, maybe I need to do something about that. Maybe I need to challenge that. Maybe I need to get help. Maybe I need to talk to friends and family, get advisors. Maybe I need to go to a mental health professional and have somebody that can help me sort this mess out and help me guide me in the right direction. You will know what you need to do. If you do slide 1 and 2 well, these are just things on the menu that you can pick from, and what you'll know where it goes and what you need to do, whether it's around your body, your mind, your heart, or your relationships. That will be up to you, and it will be unique to you. I can't tell you what to do. I can just tell you, here's a bunch of things that you can pick. So I'm going to give you a moment to brainstorm and maybe pick something that you think, you know what? The first thing I could do is look at my body. Don't worry. And you know, all these things are connected, as we mentioned. If you make sure you get better sleep, you'll be better at work. You'll be less irritated. Your relationships can improve. So all of these things are connected. So you pick your entry point. So you're invited to think about that for a bit. All right. I hope people had an idea. Maybe there was something that wasn't on my menu. Maybe there was something that you know that's uniquely yours that you can choose. You know, always start with something that's actually feasible, and that is something that you can actually do and fit in. Maybe stack it onto something that you're already doing. And if you want to do working off for your body, maybe you want to get off the bus earlier because you're already taking the bus and needing to walk 100 meters to work. Maybe get off early and walk 500 meters to work. So you can stack things. There's all kinds of ways that you can do that. Now, here's the summary of what we talked about. I threw a lot of information at you, and this is what I want you to take away. Burnout is real. It's a real thing in yourself, in others. There's a lot of different causes that can lead to it. If you're in the nonprofit sector, there are some unique factors that can contribute to higher risk of burnout that you can be thoughtful of as an organization or as an individual. It can be prevented. Burnout can be overcome. And there is definitely life after burnout. And I hope that with everything that I've thrown at you today, that perhaps you had an aha moment or an insight or an idea about something that you can do, or maybe an inspiration where you thought, oh, you know what? I think tomorrow I'm going to try this. And then be kind to yourself. Always have compassion for yourself. So rather than being punishing to yourself. So with that, I'm going to close it off, and I have some time left for Q&A. I'm going to say thank you very much. And if anybody has questions, that would be in the question box. I'm going to open it up. I think, Mercedes, were you going to read any questions that people might have?
Yes, thank you, Renzia. We can just jump in with the first question. So we have an individual asking, so after you have been on medical leave for burnout, do you have any suggestions for a return to work meeting? Specifically, how to deal with the employer?
Okay, so if you've been on medical leave, I think part of that is collaborating with your provider team, right? So if you've been on medical leave for burnout, hopefully you've had some conversations with a mental health care professional. You need to know what your pieces are, what your root causes were, and you need to engage with that conversation. I don't know how much the workplace itself or the culture in the workplace might have been a contributing factor, but I think you need to you look at what's under your control and what's not under your control, and what are the implications of that. So and I'm never an advocate of saying, just go, just leave. But I do think that as an individual, if you've been on medical leave and you've realized certain things that need to be changed, but that are out of your control, but not only out of your control, but also out of your sphere of influence, then you need to make some hard decisions for yourself. If there are things that you realize are part of my root causes that I can influence by having a conversation, you look at that and you sit down with your manager, you sit down with HR, if there is an HR, because not every organization will have HR, because some of the smaller ones don't. You sit down and say, okay, here's how I came to this point. Here's what will help me to stay in the workplace and do my work well. How can we collaborate on that? And ask for the collaboration with your manager and HR to discuss the root causes and I would suggest always go in with suggestions. So don't just go in and say, well, this was bad and that was bad. And this is say, okay, this is something that I thought of would be helpful. Go in well prepared with proposals and suggestions that will be helpful, and with the understanding that you're making these proposals and suggestions so that you can continue your commitment and your performance for that organization in a sustained and healthy way. I hope that gives you some idea. Yeah.
Yes, I think that provides a lot of valuable insights for that information there as well for that individual. The next question we have kind of surrounds a similar aspect, but from the employer perspective. So the question is, what concrete and small steps would you recommend nonprofit leaders take to mitigate these risk factors associated with burnout?
You know what? I think one of the most important things in the nonprofit sector is giving people permission. You know that you have people working for you that will go the extra mile because they very likely have human giver syndrome. You know that your employees are at high risk of overworking themselves purely by the fact that that's the kind of people that are attracted to the nonprofit sector. So I think it needs to be modeling as an organization and giving people permission to admit that they're not doing well, to take time off to take care of themselves, and even encouraging people. So it can be as simple as making sure that people take a lunch break. Mandate that they take a lunch break. Make sure that people take the vacation time that's available to them. Because, it's too easy when you're so pressed and so, to go, oh my God, they didn't use their vacation time. Thank God, because how would we get through if we were down from 3 to 2 people for 2 weeks, that, because but if that attitude will come to haunt you in the long term, because they're either going to leave or they're going to go on sick leave. So, I think giving people permission and encouraging them to take self-care is one of them. The other thing is training your managers to have those conversations. I can't overstate the importance of the manager in all of this as the role model, but also in, having them being well trained and effective to have the conversations that they need to have, so that they can listen and then make the changes that could be not just good for the individual, but also good for the organization.
Thank you, Renzia. And then the next question also builds off of that topic as well. So, in the nonprofit sector, where operations are constantly on a shoestring budget and there are very few options to distribute work due to funding constraints, how can you
Yeah.
push back and create those necessary boundaries to help avoid burnout?
That's a really good one, because I know that's where people feel that they've got their back to the wall. And I'll tell you, like, I was on the board of a not-for-profit and we had the same challenge. Like, we needed that person so hard, and yet it was so hard to put those boundaries in. So when it's so limited in how much space you have, I think, it comes down to prioritizing and acknowledging that you can't do everything all the time for everyone. So I think you need to, maybe revisit what the way is that you work your mandate, how you prioritize certain tasks, then what needs to absolutely be done and what is nice if you can get it done. And that's the only way that I think you can free yourself up, by being extremely focused on the core things that need to be done, and maybe revisiting what your you have your vision and your mandate, and then you have like your kind of like your action plan, what your action plan is, and what you can't, admitting that maybe you can't do everything. That is the hardest thing, to let things go. But then again, if you're working your employees to the bone, you're undermining your own effectiveness as an organization. I'd say it's a really hard message, but I think you still need to do that. You need to look, okay, what's number one? What do we really need to do? And what do we maybe let go of or put off? I hate to say that.
So true. Thank you so much, Renzia, for presenting such an informative webinar. As we're coming up in the hour mark, do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off today?
I just hope that people found some insight, because a lot of this information, people know a lot about. There's a lot of talk about burnout, but I hope that with today, with the way that we talked about it, people had an opportunity to reflect for themselves, have an insight, and maybe have an idea about an action that they can take that would be feasible for them, as their first step towards preventing or overcoming as an organization or as an individual. And be kind. Be kind to yourself, be compassionate with yourself. I think that's my closing statement.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Renzia. I just wanted to remind everyone that you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom following the session as well. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for our next free webinar, Fundraising for Small Nonprofits, Cultivating Donor Support, and Timing the Ask. You can find more information on this and all of our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.